Harbor Freight tools. Are they any good? Are they worth getting? Let's find out. So in today's video, I'm going to answer a question that a lot of people might be wondering. Are Harbor Freight tools any good? I think that's a big question, and it's going to take, a decent video to answer the question. So let's get into it. All right, so let's start off with the first thing. Harbor Freight Tools is an American company. That's a big misconception. A lot of people think Chinese this, Chinese that. It's an American company based out of California, and it was started in 1977 by a father-son duo, and the son is still the CEO and owner of Harbor Freight Tools. So although they may have tools made overseas, make no mistake, it is an American company. Not different than many other companies that may claim USA made that are actually not. They're just USA owned. So with that said, this is just me personally. I would rather deal with a company and a person that's upfront and honest about what they're selling and what you're getting versus a company that pretends to be made in the USA. Then you find out a big portion of the tools or the batteries or all of the tools are actually made in other countries, and they're just trying to market it as a USA made tool, which we're going to get into a little later in the video. I would rather deal with a company that's upfront saying the tools are made in Taiwan, China, Vietnam, wherever they're made. I would rather that than a fake company pretending they're made in the USA when they're really not. Let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about that? So as you can see here, I have a bunch of tools from Harbor Freight. I have my Hercules bench grinder. I have my 3-ton car jack. I have my chainsaw sharpener, dolly, drill press. I have an anvil, wrenches, tap and die set, Bauer battery tools. I have a lot of different tools that I've bought from Harbor Freight, and I do a wide variety of tasks. Anyone that's familiar with the channel, that's watched for a while, knows I do a lot of things from cutting wood, welding, carpentry, building, land work around the property with excavating and different things. And I need a lot of tools to do that wide variety of stuff, and the only way I can afford to buy those tools is if they're reasonably priced, which is one of the biggest benefits to going to Harbor Freight. I know there's a lot of misconceptions about the quality of the tools versus, some of the name brands. Now, that may be true in certain cases, but in a lot of cases I found Harbor Freight tools seem to perform just as well as the competitors at a much lower price point, which is where a lot of people like me need to be at to buy the tools. Because if I couldn't buy these tools reasonably, I couldn't buy them at all. And I would have to sub that work out to other people and spend an exorbitant amount of money, which I don't have. So I think for a certain class of people, they just make sense. So I know some of the people watching are going to laugh and say that they're junk and you can get much better tools from other companies. That's your prerogative. I'm going to say this though. If you're spending your own money on your tools and you're not making money with them, let's say you're a plumber and you're making, just for an example, let's say you're making $100 an hour with your DeWalt tools, with your Milwaukee tools. That's great. What about the person that's not making any money with their tools? They're just doing their own work, working in their own house, maybe fixing their own car, or they're doing their own carpentry. For those people that aren't making any money back with the tools, do you honestly not see where they can justify spending that kind of money? If you're making a lot of money with your tools, yeah, it makes sense to get the absolute best tool you can. Price isn't an issue. But for most people, it is an issue, and we need to be real about that. We need to be realistic, especially with the economy we're in here at the end of 2022. Things are tough for a lot of people. Gas is expensive, food's expensive, electricity, oil, everything costs an arm and a leg. And if we can save a little bit of money on tools that aren't really life-changing things so we can buy our necessities and afford to live, then so be it. So this is just my opinion. I think when Harbor Freight was in the initial phases, I think their tools were cheaply built, and honestly they had a lot of issues and they really didn't last very long. But I think over the last 45 years or so that they've been in business, they've really stepped up their game and tried to become competitive with some of the name brands, and I think the quality of their tools has gone up significantly. I can tell you firsthand, I bought a drill from them back in, I'm going to say the late 90s, probably like 98, 99. And it was a real piece of junk. It was like, I think it was $40 at the time. It was an electric drill. And it just didn't last. I ended up returning it. And, since then, I think they've really stepped up their game. So for anyone wondering about my, experience, I've said it in other videos, but I've been in the construction business for a long time, since I was 10 years old. My father, he had his own construction company. I date back to the Makita 9.6 volt tube batteries. Those were the first battery tools we've had. And since then, we've had a number of different brands, and I've had a number of different brands. I've had DeWalt, Makita, Milwaukee, Porter Cable, Craftsman, all kinds of different brands. And I can tell you what, all tools eventually stop working. This isn't 1950 anymore. The tools aren't made in America. Regardless of what brand you get, chances are it's made overseas. Very good chance it's made in China, maybe Taiwan, Vietnam. So, I mean, we can pretend that some of the other brands are superior, but if you actually look at your tools and you look at the batteries and you see where they're actually made, you might be surprised. So like I said, I go back a long time with tools. I've been using tools my whole life. I'm licensed in different trades, and I have a lot of experience. I worked with tools like these daily for about 20 years on construction sites, whether that be 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the summertime, whether it be negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, wind blowing, raining, snowing, you name it, I've been there. I'm not just speaking from a do-it-yourselfer kind of point of view. I've used these kind of tools in professional settings. I think for the average person, they just make sense. Like I said, if you're making tons of money with your tools, I think, maybe you can justify getting better tools, or maybe if your company pays for your tools, you're not going to care as much about the price. But for most people, that's not the case, and they have to factor in price as part of the equation. So if I'm going to be honest, I used to have the mindset a lot of people probably have, and that's that their tools are junk and they're really subpar, they're not worth getting. And I kind of only would buy hand tools from Harbor Freight, like wrenches and screwdrivers, things that didn't have moving parts, because I didn't think they were going to hold up. So I slowly started buying some of their power tools with motors, some of their battery tools, and I started realizing their tools have really come a long way in the last 45 years or so since they started the business. I think their tools used to be a much lower quality, and people had a lot of issues, and that's kind of what gave them the reputation that a lot of people still think of them as. But if you actually open your mind, buy tools from them, and try them out for yourself, you're going to see that they're actually pretty decent tools. A lot of these tools, I have videos for them separately, and I'll link that at the end in the Harbor Freight tool playlist, and you can see for yourself whether you think they're worth buying. But let me show you something interesting. So the interesting thing I want to show you is not the Harbor Freight anvil, which by the way has been great. What I want to show you is this. See if you can read that. What does that say? Japan. DeWalt, made in Japan. Here's another one. This is a 12 volt Porter Cable battery. I've had this battery, I bet you, for 20 years. Let's see where it's made. Porter Cable Corporation, Jackson, Tennessee. But where's it actually made? Made in Taiwan. What do you guys think of that? It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Maybe some of you knew that, maybe you didn't, but I know there's going to be people in the comments that are going to say, hey, Milwaukee's the best, DeWalt's the best. I'm just going to say this. Google your company of choice. Let's take Milwaukee. Google Milwaukee and see who owns them. Who's owned them since 2005? Where is that company based out of? Is it an American company? So although those companies may have plants in the US, they may employ Americans, they may make certain products in the US, you could say very similar things about Harbor Freight. They may not have their tools made in the US, but they have 1,300 stores with, let's say, 20, 25,000 employees that are making money in the US. They're American citizens, and they're bringing home their paychecks to their families. So the money's staying here in America. So is it really that much different, one versus the other? I don't think it is. The tools are made overseas and the companies are based here. So like I said, I think they've come a long way since they started 45 years ago. I think the product line has gotten a lot better, especially like the battery tools. If you look at the Bauer line, the 20 volt Bauer line, there's over 55 different tools you can get in that system. That's their mid-range system. And if you want to step up into a higher end tool, you can go to the Hercules 20 volt, and they have better tools that are a little more money, but they're better You can get bigger batteries, like 12 amp hour batteries, whereas the Bauer only goes up to 5. That's one of the things I do like about the name brand Battery Tools is they have bigger batteries, but so doesn't the Hercules line. You can get a 12 amp hour battery with the Hercules. The Bauer only goes up to 5, so depending on what you're doing, I think 5 amp hours is probably enough for most people, for most jobs. If you're using the battery all day long doing trades on a construction site, chances are you're going to have multiple batteries, so you're not going to be that worried about one battery having to last you so long. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. It's kind of an overview of Harbor Freight. I'm going to do more specific videos and different things. That way it's easier to digest and the videos stay shorter. Let me know if you have any specific topics you want me to cover, and I'll see you guys next time. So make no mistake about it. If I can buy American products and they're reasonably priced that I can afford them, I certainly do so. The problem is a lot of those products are so exorbitantly expensive, or they're not available at all. You don't have a choice but to buy foreign made. So I own my Case Ingersoll garden tractors, and unfortunately they're all used because they're not made anymore. I have my Super Split log splitter that's made here in Massachusetts in the good old USA that I bought new. I have my Log Right tools. So if I can buy an American product, I do. But you always can't do that. It's not always an option. Am I happy with how things are here in 2022? No, there's a lot of things that I don't like about the modern day, how things are. But the reality is, unless you're going to invent a time machine, you can't go back, and neither can I. I wish we could go back some days. Sometimes I wish I had been born 50 years earlier. I feel like I would have fit in better. Things were made here in America. We had more pride. Things were all different. I don't want to get political, but the reality is we have to go with what's available today, 2022. I can't go back in time, and neither can you.